welcome to Series 2 of my podcast, Innervation, where we get to hear stories and experiences of incredible women in science and technology. Not only will you get insights into some fascinating innovations, but you may also even relate to their stories, especially if you're a little unconventional or non-conforming. As with all science and technology, what these women do have a real impact on all of our lives, whether we realise it or not. But here on Innervation, I'm also giving women, diverse women, a platform for them to be heard and for us to be inspired and uplifted by what they've learned along their life's journeys. This week, I talked to Nwosu.
Hello, my name is Nwosu and I'm a civil engineer working on high-profile building projects in central London.
Wow, Mimi, it is so awesome to meet you. Thank you so much for taking the time. I want to know what a lady like you is doing on construction sites.
I've always been quite practical and I'd like to see how processes were done. So I've always been really interested in building processes, well, since I got to university anyway. Really interested in how things were built together, the quality processes behind it, the health and safety and managing people. And I knew that being in construction will allow me to work on all of those skills and see all of those things in actions. And I just love seeing projects from start to finish. I love central London because of the juxtaposition between the old and the new. And I knew that I wanted to contribute to our wonderful skyline.
So what is your official kind of title? Are you a civil engineer?
Yes, so within my role, I'm a civil engineer, which means that I manage a number of packages on our site. So what does that exactly mean? So in order to build projects, you have to have a number of trades on site. So whether that be the steel work, the brickwork, even from the finishing. So I actually work on the finishing side of works. So that will be our carpets, our raised flooring, putting in skirting boards, windows, etc., etc. And also, it's something really important, actually, passive fire protection. So I just make sure that the people on site know exactly what they're doing, know their duties in line with our specification and their agreements with us. They're doing things to good quality, health and safety practices in place, also managing time and budget.
Does that mean you're managing lots of guys? Because I'm assuming what you do is very kind of male dominated.
Yeah, so I manage lots of men on site, which actually feels quite good. So I kind of go to site and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a woman, I'm also black, I'm also all of these different things that people may have preconceptions of me, but I know what I'm doing, which is really important. I've got really good support on site and the men actually really enjoy working with me. So every day doesn't necessarily feel like a working day. We're also working as well as laughing most of the day, which is quite nice.
So tell me how it all began for you. Like as a little girl, did you think that this was what you were going to end up doing?
No, actually. So growing up, I always wanted to be a doctor. That was my brickwork. I thought it was embedded into my DNA. I watched all the Holby City, I watched ER, I watched all of those programs, and I thought this is going to be the career for me. So I went to not university. I did my A-levels in biology, chemistry, psychology, and religious studies to prep myself for medicine. However, unfortunately, on results day, it didn't actually go that way. So I decided to study another science degree at university. I think a couple of months in, I realized that this is not the degree for me. And I thought this is weird because it's actually one of the stepping stones into studying to be a medical professional. So I thought if I don't like this, I'm probably not going to like that either. So I decided that I was actually going to drop out. Luckily for me, on the day that I was going to drop out, I met a friend. He asked me what I was doing. I told him I was handing in my coursework, which was an absolute lie. And because I felt very embarrassed, like dropping out of university at that time was just like not really heard of. So he said, oh, when you hand in this coursework, why don't you come with me to my lecture after if you've got a break? And I said, yeah, I've got 3 hours to my next one. So yeah, of course. I didn't know what he studied. Didn't really know much about anything. Just was kind of just wanted to know what the next thing was and what he was doing really. So I followed him to his lecture and he studied civil engineering. And I think what drew me in mostly was number one, the passion of the lecturer. Number two, I fell in love with bridge construction and just the technicalities of building bridges, the mathematics behind it and all those type of things. And 15 minutes later, I changed degree and university, study civil engineering.
Gosh, so the whole course of your life changed in 15 minutes. Was it really like the sort of, were you just like completely gripped by what you heard in that lecture?
Yeah, so obviously most of society knows engineering products and knows engineering infrastructure, but I think when I sat in that lecture, I thought, wow, I did not know there was so much mathematics that went into bridge construction. And I always thought to myself when I'd be driving along with my family, how did they put this bridge in place? Why is it that I never saw them building this bridge? Then I realized in the lecture, they actually do a lot of it overnight. So that's why I never saw it. And it was kind of things like that that really interested me. Knowing that there's all of these engineering products, infrastructure, etc., that I actually don't know about. And then I became really interested in how things were made and how things were put together, and at what stage does it come into contact with the public, and how does it actually directly affect us all, you know? And then I realized, doctors and everyone in the medical professional field actually save a lot of lives. They say maybe hundreds of lives daily, but engineers save billions of lives on any given day. And I like to call us kind of like undercover superheroes, whereas people know of our infrastructure, they know of our products, but they don't know who we are and they don't know what we do. So then I kind of decided that I was going to spend part of my career as well as being a good engineer, but to get people to understand what civil engineering is. Civil engineering is actually the crux of society. So I decided that I was going to spend part of my time being an engineer and part of my time getting the word about civil engineering out there.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite amazing that civil engineering is all around us and we just don't realize it. But for you, what was it like, did it ever occur to you that you were in a minority, and did it affect your confidence in some way?
I think, at university, there was a decent mix of women to men in our class. And in terms of racial diversity as well, there was quite a good mix. But I think what shocked me more was when I went into the world of working and it wasn't the same as university. And I thought to myself, why did I see such a diversity at university, but when I've come to the workplace, it's not the same? And then it was kind of from there, it kind of took an attack. Yeah, it definitely took a knock on my confidence, because I felt so comfortable being such a mixed and diverse environment. So for example, I live in London, where it's quite diverse. I live in Croydon specifically, where it's 55% BAME and etc. So working in central London and not seeing that direct reflection was very strange to me. And all of my role models back at school and back at college, etc. Well, I went to sixth form, but back at school, back at college, sixth form, whatever, were from a BAME background. So coming into the industry and not seeing those people around me constantly again was very strange. But then I also think
where did everyone go?
Yeah, honestly, I'm still wondering where that question is. Where do we all go? But I think as well, like even with saying that, with the lack of diversity in the industry, but I have found that there are people who have been really, really willing to support me, and I've also found loads of groups who are representing minority groups or underrepresented groups in general, and those have been really helpful as well. And even having allies in the industry, I've had a lot of white men, white women, etc., who have really wanted me to succeed in this industry and said my name in places that I've not been in, alerted with different opportunities, etc. So it's not necessarily about like having a person who directly looks like you to be your mentor or directly looks like you to be your sponsor. It's just someone who sees something in you and is willing to kind of let you go there, if that makes sense. So
yeah, that's what's so crucial about mentors and sponsors, is that it's not necessarily finding your doppelganger. It's really about sort of like just receiving that support and encouragement.
Exactly.
What do you think makes a good mentor?
I think what makes a good mentor is somebody who listens, but also gives practical advice. So I remember I had such strange, not really strange. I'm a big thing. I like to dream big, like really big. Sometimes it can seem a bit out of touch, out of reach. I don't know, but for somebody who can see your vision, but also puts it into perspective in ways that you can kind of get there within reason, makes sense. I kind of sees your dreams. So I know a lot of my mentors, we have sessions whereby we do like a writing workshop, and they kind of say, okay, so where do you want to go? And I say, I want to be this and that, and I start glamorizing all of these things. I'm like, but I want it tomorrow. And it's kind of like, that's not necessarily going to happen tomorrow, but it's kind of like giving you the skills, the opportunity, even if they have like sessions like these as well, where you kind of talk about your roles, talk about your experiences, maybe giving their advice on their partial experiences as well. But I think importantly in mentorship, one thing is, I don't know, there's so many important things I think in mentorship that needs to be there, but one of them is having like a very down to earth relationship, because I feel like once you have that personal relationship, you can be honest both ways. So that's why I think it's really important in my mentorship relationships anyway, to be comfortable speaking to this person about where I want to go. If I can't be comfortable to tell you what I want to do with my career, would it make any sense? Or not just my career, my life, whatever, depends what kind of mentorship it is. But then there's just no point. But for me, importantly, is someone who makes me feel comfortable and who can actually see potential in me. I feel like with women of color as well, we find putting is it called imposter syndrome? We have like a lot of imposter syndrome. We say we can't do certain things, or we don't see ourselves in certain places, but you need someone in your corner going, yes, you can. And because I've had a lot of that in my career, I feel like it's made me not big-headed, but it's made me feel good. And it made me feel like I can do things that I thought I couldn't, or I can see myself in places that I thought I couldn't, even if there's no one directly who looks like me before me. It makes me want to strive more, want to be maybe not the first Black, but like, or the first person or whatever, but want to be an inspiration to others. So I think that personal relationship for me is the most important. I think in engineering, it's very important to have a diverse and inclusive workforce, because number one, we live in a very diverse and inclusive environment on a very basic level. So we need to design for absolutely everybody. There's no such thing as, I don't know, racist infrastructure or, ableist, there's no such thing. So I think it's really important to reflect the society that we live in. I think that's kind of the number one. That's my number one answer. We need to reflect the society that we live in. So in order to reflect directly the society we live in, we need to have representation of the people in our society. So without that, we are designing out a certain group of people. And I just think that is the main reason why we need diversity in engineering. And I think it's not even that specific groups bring certain things, but I just think as well, it's just that diversity of thought. People see things in such different ways, which I think is beautiful. And that's what makes the world the most spectacular place that it is because everybody's so different and everybody sees different things. No one sees things in a wrong way. It's just a very unique way of seeing things. And I think if we can bring everybody's ideas together, brings everyone's diversity of thought together, we can definitely identify gaps in our industry, things that aren't necessarily designed yet. There's so many jobs. One thing about engineering, they always say that there's so many jobs out there, or so many products, infrastructure, etc., that hasn't been made yet. But I think it's because of the lack of diversity of thoughts that we haven't closed those gaps. And also, engineering is such a global career. There are so many things in country. For example, people come from different parts of the world to come and work in the UK, for example. There are so many innovations and creativity that's in these countries abroad that actually can be used here and vice versa. So I think to make the world actually, on a very basic level, to make the world a better place and to make people actually understanding of each other, I think engineering does more than just innovation and creativity in terms of products and infrastructure. It's actually a good way to help people understand each other and understand why the world works the way it does and how we can build in different countries. It's something else that I talk a lot about why countries maybe use a certain material, for example, in different ways. If we can bring those people together and understand why the property of that certain material works for that country, maybe we could use it here for something else.
Speaking to you, I just see someone who is so badass, as a little term I picked up when I was in the US. Did you have to develop certain parts of your character to be in such a macho world, or have you always been like this?
I think I've always been someone who's been quite, I don't want to say outspoken, because I think that makes things sound really negative, but somebody who is passionate about what they did. And I've always been told growing up, if I was going to do something, I should always make sure I'm good at it. So, and I should also make sure I'm good at it and passionate about it, and that I'm really driving for change whilst doing it. So I think it's something that I've kind of had ingrained into me as well. But I think what I've always been told in engineering, which was quite interesting, especially working in construction, is that you need to be thick-skinned. Now, I never really understood what that meant, and I still don't really understand what that means, because I think it's very okay to be emotional, to feel. I think when people describe people as being emotional, I think it kind of says that, oh yeah, you know, they're not going to be good at their job because they're crying all the time. But actually, people who are actually pretty passionate about what they do get upset about certain things. And I think it's okay to bring that to work, to show people that, yes, something has gone wrong, this has affected me, and this is how I'm going to react to it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think you have to be macho to be in engineering or anything, those stereotypical things that people are saying. I think it's quite okay to be yourself. And I think I found in engineering as well, when I started to bring more of myself to work, people were very receptive of it. And it was so nice to see. Like, I remember when I first started my career, I felt like I had to shield myself a little bit, because I always thought, oh no, the corporate world is very this, it's very that. I wouldn't classify myself as somebody who is corporate. I don't know. But they say, oh, the corporate world is this, the corporate world is that, you have to be a certain way. And it made me feel uncomfortable at work. It actually made me not want to be at work, because I felt like I couldn't be myself. But then when I decided that, you know, I am who I am, and whoever's who's gonna receive that is gonna receive that, I've actually enjoyed my job more and felt more comfortable, even to small things like bringing my own culture's food to work, that kind of thing. Like, why should I shield not eating my own food at work? So it's even the little things that you kind of miss. So I think it's really, really important to bring yourself to work, and people will receive that sooner or later.
Do you know what? I love that so much. And this is exactly why we need women in engineering.
Yes.
Because, I mean, you know, you're bringing that difference and you're embracing it. What made you put your sort of defenses down and just go, do you know what, I'm going to take myself to work?
I think I just got very tired. I got tired. I started getting really emotionally drained of like putting on like a new mask or a new facade, or just to come to work. Somewhere I have to be 40 hours per week. I have to pretend to be somebody else. That's another job in itself, you know?
Yes.
So exactly. So it was just kind of like, do you know what? I just really can't be bothered that day. And then I think one of the days I walked in, I actually forgot to, when I go to bed, I put my headscarf on. I forgot to take off my headscarf that day. And I went to work and people were like, oh, your hair looks nice. And I went, do you know what? Actually, it does. Thank you. And it was kind of from then I thought, do you know what? People didn't even realize that this was my bed hair. So I'm just going to come to work and hope for the best. And then I slowly started kind of like, it was still a very slow process for me. So then I slowly started to like bring in my own foods and stuff. Still very conscious of, you know, our foods that have a lot of smell. The ingredients are very different. So I kind of said to myself, okay, I'm going to bring these things to work, but I'm going to have to start explaining myself on top of it. I can't just eat. I must explain what I'm eating. So that's when one good thing fantastic thing we had at one of my first jobs, we had World Foods Day. So it was so nice for me to kind of have to only explain it once on this World Foods Day. I'll bring my cultural food into work and be like, right, guys, we're explaining this. I'm going to explain what this food is and say where it comes from, how to make it, and I'm only going to do it once. And that was only one time, because now when I brought it in, everybody already knew what it was. So I think it's really nice when you have that support from your organization as well through diversity inclusion initiatives such as World Foods Day. To kind of make you feel comfortable. So it was kind of like a slow process of that, and also meeting other people in industry who are focused on diversity inclusion. So I joined quite a few groups when I first started. So when you meet people who kind of have an understanding of who you are, and you know, you just naturally feel more comfortable, and you ask them about their experiences, how they merge themselves into their job as well. So it was kind of using those techniques as well that helped me a lot.
Do you know what? I don't want to sound like a victim, but I'm going to sound like a victim. When I was in engineering, I just didn't feel like I could explain myself. And you've really switched a light bulb on in my head about what it was that made me feel uncomfortable, which was that I just didn't want to have to explain myself. But if a company embraces the idea of encouraging people to tell us, you know,
yes,
then that's brilliant. Like, because I have always really wondered what corporations can do to encourage more diversity and inclusion. And it is things like that, like just, you know, having a World Food Day, or, you know, just days where you acknowledge people's holidays and things like that, you know.
Yes.
It's so, because it's mind-opening, isn't it?
No, I agree. I love learning about different cultures and different foods and different people. I think people is what makes the world go round. Like, I love engineering so much because it's how people communicating with others, explaining things to people, making things work for wider society. I just love people so much, hence something in the industry kind of thing. I just love people so much and making the world a better place for all types of people. For me, it doesn't matter who you are or what background you've come from. It's just, how can I make the world a better place for you?
So in your experience then, because, you know, it is, maybe it's not difficult for women to get into engineering these days, but, you know, what advice, if you were mentoring a young woman who's kind of trying to follow in your footsteps, what would be the absolute things that you need to tell her in order to sort of empower her to enter an industry like yours?
First and foremost, I'd always say to keep your options open. I think one thing that happened to me when I was at university, I thought I knew it all when I came to the working world. I thought I'd studied civil engineering, so I must know everything already. I must know every little nook and cranny of civil engineering that you can go into. But when I came to the working world, I realized, hold on a minute, actually, there are so many different parts of civil engineering that I still had never heard of. So I think one of them would definitely be to keep your options open. And number two, to speak to people. Speak to people in all different roles in your organization, not just necessarily the civil engineering roles, that's what you are, or the engineering roles, that's what you're after, but to understand the different parts of your organization and to see exactly where you can fit in, the skills you can acquire, even if you're not necessarily looking to, you know, do another job outside of engineering. Engineering actually encompasses a lot of those skills from the other people's roles as well. So see what you can learn outside of your job too. Another one would be to advocate for yourself. I think visibility is actually very important in our industry. So if you are doing a lot of hard work, you feel like you're not being repaid for it, sometimes your manager may not notice that if you don't tell him or her, sorry, I said him, please cut that. If you don't tell them, my manager's a man, so I mean, if you don't tell them, they will never know that you're doing all of this work. So, and also to kind of talk about what you're doing and to tell others about what you're doing as well. And I think put yourself forward for certain things. So if you're going to go talking to schools, into colleges, universities, nominate yourself for awards. I didn't know you could self-nominate. If I knew that, I would have self-nominated myself so much more. To self-nominate, really get your name out there. It can really help in terms of networking and meeting other people in the industry, opening yourself to various amount of opportunities, even outside of engineering as well. Another thing I would say is to keep in contact with your university. If the university is the path you've chosen to do engineering, by the way, is to keep in contact with university and to always say thank you. Even if it's not just a university, that could be from anywhere, but to always say thank you to those who have helped you along the way, because it's not just about not burning bridges, it's also gratitude is very important. And I think saying thank you to somebody, I think it's almost a forgotten art. Like when you leave a job or you finished your time with somebody, you don't just leave them. That person's helped you a considerable amount to get to where you are today. So it's very important to not burn bridges. I think that will be it, actually. Yeah, but my biggest one is to always say thank you. Always, no matter what, say thank you.
That really is so lovely. And actually, when you were talking about, it's a real combination of like humility and total acceptance of who you are. It's like a weird combination of that, because on the one hand, you're dropping the ego, saying, I've studied all of this, but I don't know anything, humility. But then this idea that kind of around the same time, you were like, do you know what? I'm just going to show up as myself. It's such a powerful cocktail of kind of strength. I love that.
Yeah, it's something that you learn, definitely, especially in engineering as well. Like, because the world, I think people forget as well with engineering, the world changes so quickly. So especially with the upcome of technology, AI, etc., things are constantly changing. So yeah, the books you learned at university written in 1965 probably won't apply. But and it's important to kind of keep yourself up to date on the recent industry knowledge and, you know, all of these type of things. And especially at work where things are working in real time. Well, most companies anyway, where things are working in real time. So, and companies are doing things to kind of keep themselves up to date as well. They also want their employees to do the same. So, for example, at my organization, they're a construction firm. They do a lot of training if you want to learn how to code, which I think is so powerful, because that is the future. Technology, coding, data analytics, all of that kind of stuff is definitely the future. So I think it's really, really good that our company are not buy. I'm not. I don't want to say buying into it, but buying into it because they know that is the next step for most people. So yeah.
Given that you are such a kind of badass, how have you dealt? Because I'm sure that this has happened to you. How have you dealt with people that are really just wanting to not welcome you in?
In regards to people not wanting to welcome me in spaces where I haven't really felt welcome, what I tend to do is showcase my technical expertise. So I always feel like people may think, okay, she probably doesn't know as much as she thinks she does, or she's probably not as good at her job as she thinks she is. But I think for me, when I do a lot of speaking engagements, it most tends to now be about my technical expertise. To showcase people, okay, I'm not just a good speaker. There's nothing wrong with actually doing your job, being technically excellent, and also showcasing your other skills as well. So, but I also am very good at my job, and there's nothing wrong with that. So when I walk into spaces, I tend to show people that even if I don't know the specific area that they want me to be involved in, I show that I'm willing to learn. And if it is an area that I am involved in, I tend to show that I'm really good at my job by showcasing my technical expertise and showcasing that I am here because they brought me here for a reason and not because I'm maybe the diversity hire some people may think or whatever else they think of me. But I am good at my job and I am multi-talented and multi-skilled. And there's a number of things that I could bring to this job, even if in that instance, I don't know the technical know-how of that job, but my other skills, maybe me being good at communication, me good at building relationships, me being good at public speaking is another reason why I'm here. So it's kind of to showcase why I could be here. And even if I don't know the knowledge of that area, it's the willingness to learn and build those relationships.
And I think that's why STEM can be so empowering, because by studying STEM, you are like developing this logic and methodology, and you are picking up skills to teach yourself things that you don't know. And so when people, when young people say, STEM subjects are so hard and intimidating, it's like, yeah, but it really tools you up.
Yes, but I think sometimes when people say that, I think it's the missing the missing gap in the education system as well. So when they're teaching STEM at university or STEM at school or whatever, it's usually just the kind of theoretical knowledge. You never really do any presentations. There's never any real life practical application when you're studying at that point. So you don't really see the links and how you can actually use other skills to do that job. You don't just have to be good at maths, because like I always say to people, I didn't do maths and physics at A level. And I'm an engineer today. And I feel like I'm pretty good at what I do. I feel like hard skills can be learned, but your soft skills are more important on the job. So when you first meet somebody, you don't regurgitate mathematical formulas. They actually meet the person that you are and how you communicate and how you work as a team. That's the first thing that they'll see, So all of those mathematical formulas and all that kind of stuff is now done on the computer. Hey, so I think it's really important to get down the soft skills first, definitely. But because at school it's all the theoretical knowledge and all the I like to call it contingency stuff. So if the system completely fails, we're going back to the nitty gritty of writing things down and doing the quadratic sequence, all that kind of stuff. But like I said before, it's the soft skills that people tend to see first, how you communicate, how you shake someone's hand, how you say hello, that kind of stuff. I think it's really important in engineering first and foremost.
So I know that you've got an expertise in concrete.
Yes.
Why did you decide to go into that kind of field? And what kind of impact does it have on the rest of us?
So I chose to go into concrete when I was at university. So my favorite module at university was swords and materials. And within that, we covered concrete. And my lecturer really, really inspired me. She was so passionate about what she did, about concrete, about everything. And I remember sitting there thinking, wow, how can someone be so passionate about concrete? And then now here I am. So, and then I think for me, what kind of made me want to go that much further when I did my dissertation. So I did my dissertation in ultra performance fiber reinforced concrete, which is essentially a concrete with tiny fibers in it. So when this concrete cracks under pressure, it has these little fibers that kind of build a bridge to hold it together for a bit longer, in very basic terms. And I did how that behaved in fire conditions. And I was actually inspired by, this is going to sound really strange, but I was inspired by a tragedy that happened in central London around the time of me writing my dissertation. There was a fire incident with a building, and I said to myself, hold on, how is the structural integrity of this building still there? The actual concrete structure was still there, but it was the cladding that burned. And I went, hold on, concrete's able to withstand fire. Excellent, do my dissertation on that. So it was that made me go into concrete. And it was actually another thing as well, was that how much we don't know about concrete, or like the general society actually may not know about concrete. So we living in London, it's known as being a concrete jungle. But I remember sitting there thinking, I actually don't know why we use concrete like this. Why? So when I did further research and did all those other things, I remembered how fascinating of a material is, and that not all concrete is the same. You know, concrete we use in a bridge, not the same concrete we use in a road, not the same concrete we use in a tunnel, not the same concrete you use in your home. And I was like, okay, but why? And what makes it so different? What are the properties, the physical and the mechanical properties that make it so different? And why do we need those in different infrastructure? And I thought that's important. I think that is really important for the general population to know. Most of our infrastructure is made from concrete. And I just wanted to kind of share that knowledge and really understand why we use concrete, basically. Very basic understanding of where my passion came from. But I think that's where the beauty of it comes. Just a basic passion and understanding. Just wanted to know why.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as a material, it's, gosh, why is there that feedback? Test. As a material, it's just so kind of inert and boring to look at. But actually, when you delve into the nitty gritty of it, literally, it's so fascinating.
Definitely, and I think people might think it's a bit more complicated than it actually is. So I remember being at school and doing material science about the little atoms. I don't know how to explain this properly now, but I remember seeing a diagram of different atoms and how they're packed together. And that's basically how concrete works. The more packed together it is, the stronger the material is.
And when I asked, like, you know, what kind of impact does it have on the rest of us? I mean, it's massive, because concrete is just used in most construction. There's some scary, right?
Yes. So that's another thing. So how it can impact the general population would be that I think concrete is known to be this fantastic material, which it is. I'll never take that away from it. Fantastic material. However, it's also known to have really bad effects on the environment. The production of cement actually contributes 8% towards global CO2 emissions. And I think that's really important for people to know. So we need more material scientists, more engineers to combat the use of cement. Like, how can we replace cement with another material to make concrete more sustainable? Is that kind of research. I think that is what brings it back to being relatable to people, to understand how it's affecting us in terms of sustainability.
And even though concrete looks like cement, they're not the same, are they?
No, not interchangeable terms at all. So concrete is the finished product, so concrete is made from water, cement, aggregates being crushed rock, and some sort of admixture. And then cement is just one of the ingredients used to make concrete. That's
like calling a cake flour.
Yeah, exactly. So that's actually, when people ask me about concrete, I always liken it to a cake. It's like baking a cake. You put all the ingredients together, mix it together, put it into an oven, a curing tank in concrete terms. You put it into a curing tank for 28 days. You do not bake your cake for 28 days, but you put it into a curing tank for 28 days. It hopefully reaches desired properties and physical and mechanical properties, and Bob's your uncle.
Do you know, when I listen to you, I just hear someone that is so full of self-belief, which is just very empowering to listen to. Like, it's just so kind. You know, when you're around someone who has humility but also just really knows their stuff, it can be very uplifting. But what are you like with failure, for example?
So I know failure very well. I think it's been a process with age, I must say. I remember when I didn't do well at A level, and it really took a knock to my confidence. Like, that really, really affected me for a number of years. Even when I decided to go to university, I thought, okay, I'm at university, I should feel better, but I didn't. And I think it's the healing process within yourself and not being too hard on yourself and allowing yourself to kind of have those slip backs, and that's okay. For me, failure has been one of the most beautiful things, because me failing my A levels meant that I didn't become a doctor. Actually meant I became an engineer. And I think, again, it's the age thing. So you see how it affects you, maybe some areas, maybe a little bit later on. And I think it's important to give yourself time. And I still have a lot of healing to go through as well. And in terms of, even when I was at university, I missed a first class degree and I was so desperate for it. So sometimes I still beat myself up about it now, 3 years later. But it's that healing process within yourself and knowing that actually, maybe, yes, you missed it then, but you're achieving in other aspects of your life. So maybe why has that academic failure, for me, in my instance anyway, that academic failure really taking its toll on me when I'm achieving in so other different ways? And I think as well, that's where mentors also come in again, someone who has your corner, someone who's supporting you and seeing your career goals. So they can actually kind of make you feel more at ease about the failure that you did have, or they can say, okay, maybe you didn't do so well at this, but there are these many avenues that you can go down to as well to reach the same point. And I think that's very important, to have plan A, B, C, and D, and Z if needed, so giving yourself time and doing that healing within yourself is something that I've learned over the number of years. And I think it's a slow process, but it's very important to understand.
It's interesting that you talk about a healing journey, because what I hear in you is someone who already has the answer to those knocks in confidence, which is that there is no such thing as failure. Like, they're just sort of learning opportunities. I mean, you've learned so much from having failed your A levels. Well, not failed, but like didn't get what you were hoping for. And it actually nudged you on a different journey. So it's that is already a healed behavior, that you're taking the goodness out of things that don't quite go to plan. So then another question for you would be, women are so multi-dimensional, aren't they? I mean, today's women can have a career, they can be juggling a relationship, friends, and then there's also this question of motherhood. What is your sort of like philosophy on juggling all of those things? How are you approaching it?
How am I approaching juggling a lot of things? When people talk about time management skills, I don't think I have any of that. So I think it's kind of just, for me, most of my life is kind of to cross that bridge. When it gets there, you'll find a method that works for you. So in respect to me and my career, I think the number of things that I'm juggling career-wise anyway right now would be doing my job and also finding the time to do the chartership route. And I found that quite difficult. And I think that's just because it's maybe a bit of self-doubt, maybe a bit of laziness, not sure.
It could be a bit of perfectionism, because I think often when we think we're being lazy, we're actually just scared to do something because we don't want to do it imperfectly.
No, that's it, fear. That's what I want to use now, fear. No, you're not laziness, that's too personal. But okay, so one of the things I'm currently juggling right now in my career is doing my job and also trying to do the route to meet chartership. I think some of the things that are kind of holding me back would be, the main one would be fear. Fear of not doing it correctly, fear of not having the right skills and expertise for certain attributes you have to meet, the fear of asking for more training maybe, or the fear of just knowing how much I potentially have to do in order to meet my end goal of being chartered. Especially being in an industry for a number of years now, I'm assuming there are a number of the different skills and expertise that I still require to get to the full way to chartership. And if I lay that out in front of me, it will make it seem bigger than it actually is. So I'll take longer to do more of the process. Maybe I should start it now that I'm saying that. But and also that also comes with perfectionism, just wanting to do things right perfectly first time. And that's just not the way the world works. You have to do things. You have to do things in the way that works for you. So I know a lot of the powerful women in our industry are also mothers. They're balancing motherhood, coming to site every day at 8 a.m., doing 12 hours, going home and doing their motherly duties. And I think that is the most powerful thing when I see that on site. Like, I couldn't imagine me who just has to look after myself, but there's other people who are looking after them and their children. And whenever I speak to them about, and they're also chartered, by the way. So when I speak to them and I say, oh, how do you do it? And they say, do you know what? It's all about self-belief and doing it in a way that works for you. I know a lot of people put time spans to things and it works for some people, but for me, it doesn't work for me because it gives me a bit of anxiety. I'm like, okay, well, I said I'm going to give myself 3 years to do something. I've now got 1 year left and I haven't done any of it. So I think it's kind of time, pace, sitting with your mentor, having those guidelines in place and understanding that even if you've given yourself 3 years to do something, if you don't do it in those 3 years, there's still more time to do things, and just giving yourself, being kind. No, that's it. Being kind to yourself, especially if you're juggling a lot of things whilst working. It's being kind to yourself and knowing that even if you set yourself daily goals, that sometimes they won't be met, and that's okay to do that.
I've noticed that in talking to lots of different women in STEM, that some of us are further along down the line than others in terms of being able to juggle a lot. And it's interesting you talk about some women who are chartered, they're doing the job, they're also bringing their kids, they're ticking a lot of boxes. And I don't know what it is, but when I was sort of developing my career, I didn't have the ability to think in a multi-dimensional way. I just didn't have the capacity to go, I'm going to develop my career and then I'm going to find a partner. And then we're going to have children at the same time. I don't know whether I'm just an absolute...
No, you're not isolated in that thought. No.
Okay, because I was how come some women are just I'm going to do 5 things at the same time and it's going to work out and I'm going to have the confidence to ask for that and go for it and all of that. Because when I put myself back in that place where I was choosing, I had to be so focused on one thing. And I don't know what makes me different from the women that have managed to juggle.
Yeah, I think that as well sometimes. So I still don't sit down and think I'm going to be a mother and I'm going to do all of these things as well as working. For me, they are very isolated things. They're very time-consuming jobs.
Final question for you. What's been the one piece of advice that you've used over and over again and is your go-to thing?
Oh, so my one piece of advice is if you don't ask, you don't get. I remember hearing that. My mum used to always say that to me, if you don't ask, you don't get. So if you're needing something and you haven't said anything to anybody, no one will know. And if you do ask, the only answer you can get that's probably negative is no. And nowadays that's by email. So it's not even face to face. So if you need something, you want to progress in your career, you need some training, think you need some more money, ask for a promotion, etc., you need to ask. You need to ask. These people aren't mind readers. They're not going to assume that you want these things. They're going to assume that's what you want for your career. You definitely have to ask.
That's awesome. So if there are people listening and sort of youngsters who are looking to follow in your footsteps, is there anything that you want to say as a sort of parting few words about getting into civil engineering and pursuing a career in the industry?
My parting words would honestly be, if you have an interest, engineering is for you. And if you have an interest in the way the world works and to build up a civilization, then civil engineering is definitely for you.
Do you know what? You are so inspiring, and
Thank you.
Been so lovely talking to you. And I feel like I want to go away and sort of I don't know, adopt your attitude of being so yourself at the same time as also being extremely humble. So thank you for sharing all your experiences with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening, and please do subscribe to this podcast and maybe even rate and review it if you can. The more ratings and reviews and the more interest from those algorithms, which could help to increase the reach of this show. And you can watch the video recording of this conversation on YouTube on my new series called Esteemed. It's all about self-discovery and self-evolution on innovation. So as always, be kind and loving to yourselves and others, and I wish you all a great week.